We're going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to. What I did with last week's painting, I spent about an hour, hour and a half with little things. And as I'm always telling you, the beginning process of a watercolor is very fast, very quick to implant the image of lights and darks down, and then working into the middle area, you slow your process down, and the last part is at a crawl. Now, when I'm doing a demonstration, it's a learning tool, very much so, and I'm trying to have you understand the big things about watercolor. The details will come later on, but it's getting down the basic idea of what's there first and how to continue through the middle of the painting and a little bit beyond. But what I did in this particular case, I lifted out more lights and trees in the background. I added darks up on top here that kind of overhung the path. And what I did, which is totally legal in the watercolor world, is I added a little bit of white to the paint to signify these lights back here on the path and up in here. That was about the only thing that I did. And in many watercolor societies, using opaque watercolor is fine. But when you get to certain competitions, they don't allow you to use any white paint, which is fine too. It has to be 100% transparent. So you kind of have to abide by the rules. One of my friends down in Nashville, Indiana, wonderful painter, he's very tight in his painting. He added a little bit of opaque in a color to sign his name, and he was disqualified. So it was like, you got to be kidding me. But I went back and worked on different things in the area. I made this area a little bit darker. I had the trees overhang up in here on the top of the path. And like I said, I added some opaque white to the color along the path to kind of make it illuminated, draw the eye in, and create a little bit stronger focal point. So that's what I did with this from last week. So anyways, let's get started on what we're going to do today. This particular scene is a scene from the very, very beginning of the Wisconsin River up in northern Wisconsin. It's right on the Michigan border. It comes out of a lake called Lac Vieux des Airs. And the lake is divided almost in half to Michigan and Wisconsin. But this is a little boathouse to a very large estate up on the hill behind the trees. And this always has intrigued me. It's a very quiet spot. And my mom used to drop us off on the beginning of the Wisconsin River on the way to town so she could go grocery shopping and we would fish. So the colors we're using today are ultramarine blue, sap green, olive green, brown madder or alizarin crimson, and let's see, and yellow medium. I have to sit and remember.
Add medium?
Yellow medium.
Yellow medium.
Yellow, okay.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the paper just very lightly, and I mean very lightly. And not that it's running, it's just kind of speckled with water. And I'm going to begin by painting a little bit of the blue into the sky up here. Hope all you can see this. And I'm going to use a lot of water with the blue plus the water on the paper. So I'm going to paint right through the trees here because I want some of that blue showing through when I put the trees in.
Is that cobalt blue?
No, I'm just using ultramarine blue today.
Ultramarine, okay.
And I'm going to go in and I'm going to wash in next to it. And as I'm always telling people, timing is everything on watercolor. So I'm actually working from one area to the other. So I'm working here and I'm going to go work back underneath it because I want this to dry a little bit. And I'm adding the yellow medium to this paint. And I'm going to begin painting very bright yellow green And we're working our colors more intense at the beginning to less intense and grayer as we go back. So I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to this. I'm dripping on myself here a little bit. And I'm not working really too dark at this point, but I'm working dark enough. I'm going to add some more ultramarine blue. And I'm adding a little bit of the brown matter to this combination. And you can see that it grays it down quite a lot.
If we don't have brown matter, what,
Alizarin crimson.
okay. And what about olive green? I don't have that either. Yellow ochre and,
Let's see. Let me think about this for a minute. If you take the yellow medium and add a lot of sap, some sap green to it, you'll get what you need for the combinations that we have. So I'm taking.
Was the first green color the olive green?
That was the olive green with the yellow medium, or you could use sap green. You can get away with that. So I'm mixing up the olive green, the ultramarine blue, and I'm coming right in here, right up next to it. So I had to wait just a little bit. And I'm going to take my medium-sized brush here at this point, and I'm going to kind of very quickly dry brush this in here because this is semi-dry. Dry the brush off on a paper towel. And I'm also going to take the toothbrush to give it a little bit of texture up in here. So I'm taking a toothbrush, mixing up the paint. This will give you the feeling of the leaves up in here. And while we've got that fairly well set, I'm going to add some more ultramarine blue to the mixture and the brown matter, or your alizarin crimson. And I want to get a fairly good dark going on in here. And I'm going to spray it with the spray just a little bit.
It's dark.
It's very dark.
It is dark. That's a
Now I'm going
commitment.
to add some more light over here. But I want a good imprint of the light and dark pattern that's happening in that background so it falls back, because our darks do recede and our lights come forward. Now I have a very dark here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that in.
Right.
And I'm going to spray this with a little bit of water, just so that it keeps moving a little bit more. And then I'm going to take the ultramarine blue, add a little bit of more blue into that right there. And then I want to go a little bit lighter off on the side over here. So I'm going to add the cadmium yellow medium to it. And I want this all blended together a little bit. So again, I'm going to add a little bit of water. And it also gives it a little bit of texture that I was looking for. So I'm paying attention very closely to the light and dark pattern of things. And I'm going to add a little bit more yellow here into the mixture to bring the lawn down like so. And I got a little bit of running going on here. This is what God invented paper towels for. And I don't worry about it running into different things so all that much. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a little bit more of the blue into this yellow here. And I'm going to very, very lightly put in this blue green in here. I'm going to capture the shadow side of the boathouse. And then I'm going to add more green with the yellow into the reeds in front of the boathouse. So this thing is really captured or encompassed in all of this green that's going on here. And then I'm going to hit it with some very dark blue-green. And I'm going to gray it down.
Which greens are you using there? Is that the sap green or the olive green?
This was the sap green right here. So I add a little bit of the brown matter to it, or your alizarin crimson, and I'm going to really make this dark in here, and I'm just going to allow this to flow down. So I'm painting in a downward motion because that's how the reflections go down, and I'm being kind of careful around the boathouse because I want that reflection to remain fairly light. So I'm just going to allow that to wash in like this, and then I'll carry the rest of the reflection over here. So I'm looking at where the boathouse is at. That boathouse is right in here, and it goes like this, and I'll worry about the rest of it later. But the idea is to get, this is a lot of green in here, and I did this, I wanted to do this on purpose so that you could see how different colors work. And then we have the bank on the other side, and then we have some of that dark green in here. And you'll see how it begins to manifest itself. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the brown matter, or your alizarin crimson. I'm going to encompass the roof here. And just let it blend in. It won't hurt anything. And the only part of the white of the paper that I'm going to leave in this particular case is the front of the boathouse. Other than that, everything has been covered with pigment, and I'm just letting things drip at this point. It's not going to harm anything. It creates a little bit of a pattern of leaves and so forth. So just to get an idea of what I did is I started off, sprayed a little bit of water on here. I added a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue by itself across the top, and then I worked off over here with the yellow green, dark green. I'm not worried about the tree that's off to the right hand side here because I'm not going to define that all too much. Then I came back over here and added different greens with the use of the toothbrush up in here, a little bit of water. Then I came down here and across the grass and then across here. So if you have any questions about what colors to mix, please yell.
You make it look so easy.
Well, I'm looking at how the implant of the values are, then secondary is the color. So I look at the value, how dark, how light, and then I'm going to work it from there with the color and color, the value of the color. But I'm trying to get the movement. So if something is painted in this fashion, I paint that way. If something is painted in this fashion, I paint that way. If we have a downward movement of the small hill, I paint that way. So I always try to paint in the direction of that particular plane, whether it's a vertical, whether it's an angle, whether it's a slope, I paint in that fashion.
Did you wet that top corner first or not?
Excuse me?
Did you wet the blue area first or not?
Ever so slightly. Not to make the watercolor run, but to make it move well enough so that when you put the brush down, you don't see any brush strokes.
Is there a difference between French ultramarine and ultramarine?
Yes, the French ultramarine is a little bit deeper. There's a lot of confusion with different colors. Ultramarine blue has a ultramarine blue, a French ultramarine blue, a deep ultramarine blue, which is much deeper than the French and darker. And then there's a green shade and a blue or a red shade. So I always say experiment with different colors as you get to know what you're doing. Jim, you want us to do big sweeping movements with your brush. Okay, you want to try to do big sweeping movements with your brush and not do small little dabs.
So I mixed my yellow with the ultramarine blue, but the green that I'm getting is, I don't know, more like an olive green. I don't know.
Well, that's what I have an area that you're painting right there, yes.
Dale, I have this color green gold from Daniel Smith. Let me open it.
Who's speaking? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? I have a green gold from Daniel Smith. It looks like the color of olives.
Mix a little vodka with it with a twist.
Yeah, I'm going to use it because it looks like the olives.
Green gold can suffice for the olive green at this point.
Does it have brown in it?
A tad bit, not a whole lot.
Okay. All right, so I'll just put that in as a temporary color.
Yes.
Dale, this is Diana. My olive green is brown.
Oh,
So either they mislabeled the tube, but it is more brown than anything I've seen. So I have this terrible, even with yellow in it, it really is an awful color.
The
What brand is it?
what brand is it? Let me.
It is Blick. No, yeah.
Okay. One of the things that always bothers me going from one name brand to another is that sometimes that olive green almost looks like, excuse my expression, baby poop.
Yeah, that's exactly. No, this is Ultrek.
Yeah. And go ahead and use it. I mean, when you come down to painting or anything, you have to first always consider the value, because value carries the painting. And if you have the value right and the intensities right and the temperature is correct, the color can be off. The color can be something different. So I'm not concerned about the color all that much. I'm concerned about first the value and then the intensities and then the temperature. So I would not be bothered too much by it. That's like, in the last 40 years I've explored many different name brands and have found that at the very beginning having multiple name brands of paint on my palette suited me just fine. Now I'm really using almost predominantly core paint from Golden Paints. That's QOR. And I found that I really like the color variations that they have and the intensities and the temperatures, but I wouldn't be worried about that it's not exact color.
Hey Dale, it's Anne Marie. How did you get those darks behind the house and in the water?
The darks back in here and a little bit over there. It's a little bit darker here. I used the sap green with the ultramarine blue and just a touch of the brown matter, or if you don't have brown matter, you can use, I mean, just a pinhead of the alizarin crimson. Diana, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because all I could see is you're still with the mask on that looks really wonderful and the cowboy hat.
Okay, wait a minute.
There you
Now
go.
can you?
Okay, now I see you.
Okay.
In a couple of minutes, I'm going to go along and ask you to show me what you have so that I can gauge where you're at, what you need to proceed with.
Dale, I'm done if you want to look.
Who is speaking?
Denise.
All right, let me get to your. Okay, there you are.
Let's see.
All right, that's pretty good. Don't be worried if you haven't got your darks dark enough, because I keep on kicking the stand here. Sorry. Your darks in this particular area, Denise, could be a little bit darker.
Yeah.
I would make it darker now before you go any further.
Okay.
And
In the background.
Yeah, and then stop.
Okay.
Okay, I got this. This is my state phase 1 here, Dale.
Okay, pretty good. I like it.
Thank you.
You got it all flowing together. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. You're the
Nice
only
soft.
you're the only voice I know who it is, because you're the only guy in class besides
Okay.
Jim, and I could tell Jim's voice.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat, how are you doing? Hold it up just a little bit higher, please. Okay, good. You where you want to be. And how are you doing, Marilyn? Okay, you got a little ways to go into the water and down the grass. All right, that's good. Okay, Jim, you're coming along fine. Lisa, you're coming along all right. Denise, I looked through yours. Julie, how are you doing? Oh, good. You got the good imprint. Very good. Margaret, how are you doing? Okay, good. You want to try in the future, Margaret, to get your darks a little bit darker, so it's using less water, more pigment. That's something that you will learn by more experience. So right now you're pretty good, but remember, try to get your darks a little bit darker at the beginning, so they don't become overworked towards the middle. But you got a good imprint there. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And Mary, how are you doing today? Okay, great. Remember, you have to smile and breathe while you paint, by the way.
I know, breathing's very important.
Yes, otherwise passing out's not good.
No, not good.
No. Anne
No one
Marie?
will come. They'll come to my house and they'll say, well, we're leaving her. You know how they were saying in California, they're just like ambulances go, they go, he's going to
yeah.
die anyways.
Yeah, what an attitude.
Oh my God, can you imagine? They're leaving that up to the ambulance driver? Please.
Yes, I've heard stories like that, and we have a friend that is an emergency medical person on an ambulance, and even around here in Indiana, they have given somewhat the same orders, which bothers me.
Wow, that's awful.
I know.
It's leaving it to the ambulance drivers, and those poor guys, they're firemen.
I know they are,
Bad.
basically.
Bad. Oh, you were going to be a fireman, weren't you?
No. No.
Forest
Oh,
ranger.
plumber.
I was
Plumber.
I was a plumber at the beginning, but if I didn't go into plumbing, I would have been a forest ranger.
Oh, yes. Oh, what a job, but very lonely. At least you would have hopefully you would be married by then.
That's true.
Not to me though.
Not to Marilito.
Oh, no.
Probably
To a pioneer woman.
Probably to some bear or wolf or something.
No, a pioneer woman. No one would shave. It would be amazing. Okay.
All right. Anne Marie, how you doing?
I think pretty good. I've got it covered anyway.
All right, let's see what it
I
looks
don't know
like.
if you can see here.
No, okay, there you go. All right, that's good. All right, you're getting there. Very good. And Diana,
Can you see it?
a little bit lower.
I hate my greens. I hate the color.
Well, you know what? Greens are sometimes difficult because there's a huge variety of greens. I mean, 1/3 of this planet is covered in some sort of a green. So it is a very large spectrum.
I just don't like the yellow green that turned out from my olive in the yellow.
Okay, well, you'll be fine. Don't worry. It has to. What I'm always judging, by the way, is the relationship of what you have going on your canvas, not on mine and not on anybody else's. It has to work here, not by the photograph. Remember, we're not painting the photograph, we're painting a painting. So it's all interpretive. So
Yeah,
we're gonna
this is
get
Anne Marie.
I think
I'm sorry.
everybody's almost ready.
I just wanted to ask you, are we supposed to keep this moist? Do we keep spraying it?
I only sprayed it, I believe, twice. Once here and once here.
So we can, and the
After I
beginning,
sprayed
right?
the sky. So we're not working too wet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jim, we'll wait a little bit longer for you. A couple of things here about greens. Everybody see this chart? This is a chart I made for an upcoming workshop with the Watercolor Society of Indiana. And they wanted a predominantly green painting because they're having problems with greens too. So what I did is I just took the two greens that I work with. These two rows here over on the left are made with sap green, and the ones on the right are made with olive green. So I used all the colors that I use on my palette for demonstration. So this is sap green with ultramarine blue, and this is sap green with a little bit more ultramarine blue. So you can see that it gets darker, a little bit bluer. And then this is sap green with cobalt blue, and this is sap green with a little bit more cobalt blue. So I'm looking at how the greens react to the different colors. This here is manganese blue with sap green and a little bit more manganese blue. So you can create little color charts by taking one color and mixing every other color with it, first with a little bit and then with a little bit more. This is the raw sienna with the sap green and a little bit more raw sienna, so it becomes a little bit more yellow. The burnt sienna, you get kind of a grayed down green because burnt sienna is grayed down. And then we get a little bit more burnt sienna. It turns to a brownish green. It's no longer green. I had a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. This is with the brown matter. So you can see really a beautiful dark green, and then it turns a little bit more brown green. And then finally cadmium yellow medium on here is kind of a yellow green or a green, and then you get a yellow green. And off on this side with the olive green, you can see the different color. This is with the ultramarine blue, a little bit more. This is with the cobalt blue, some here and a little bit more blue here. So I keep on adding. The second row here is just a little bit more of what I'm added. And this is the olive with the manganese and a little bit more manganese. This is with the raw sienna, a little bit more raw sienna. This is with the burnt sienna, a little bit more burnt sienna. So you're getting different color variations with just taking these basic colors and adding it to the two different greens twice just to see what you can get. But you want to try to experiment, maybe making a couple of color charts with each color and see what happens. But it's kind of a fun experiment because the more you mix the colors, the more it's ingrained into your head about how you can do things. It's like when we have them do the color wheel in the foundations class, we have them make the color wheel, create the colors, match the colors, and put the color wheel together. Because in many colleges, they just have you buy the color wheel, which doesn't help you a bit because you have no clue on what you're doing. You don't know how you got there. So we're going to get started again. Okay, now what we're going to do again is we're going to go back to the background. We're going to start over here in this area, come across, and then down and around. The last area that I'm going to pay any attention to is the actual boathouse and the water out in front. So we're going to mix up some nice dark colorful greens back here, and I'm going to take the ultramarine blue, a lot of it, okay, and I'm going to take the sap green, and we're going to take a little bit of the brown matter. I mean, you could not even see it. It just grays it down ever so slightly. So I don't have a lot of color going on in the palette here. So I want to mix up a nice dark blue-green with a little bit of the brown matter in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here in the bottom of this first, and I'm going to start sculpting around the boathouse. And I'm using the side of the brush. I have a lot of paint on my brush at this point. And I just realized I just painted right over the birdhouses. I'll get that later. Then I'm going to take the olive green and mix it in here with the same thing, and I'm going to start moving up. And at the same time, I'm going to take the toothbrush just with water on it, spray that a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow medium to this. And I'm not trying to make trees. I'm still looking at the masses. Out towards the edges, I'm going to make the feeling of the trees, but I'm not going to try to overwork anything. And I'll go back and forth between the dark and the lighter blue-green. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to this. And I want to come into this tree over here, which becomes very important. So I'm dry brushing into the tree to create those leaves. And at the same time, I'm going to take a damp, my 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to pull out and soften some of this dark that was in here. And I'm not being over particular on certain things, but I do want certain things covered. And I keep on going back and making some new greens, different variations. I'm not trying to get the color exact every time. It's a little bit different every time. So I'm going to come up into here and I'm going to create, not trying to cover everything that I originally put down, by the way. I'm trying to see on how the different greens will affect things. And I'm going to add a little bit more blue because I have a real dark over here. And then I'm going to come up into here with more of a dry brush effect. I'm going to put a pine in here just for the heck of it. Then I'm going to very carefully feed this dark back into this tree here. Now, you can't stare at the photograph too much, to be truthful, because it'll lead you down a rabbit hole. I'm looking at the painting here first, not the photograph. I'm looking at what needs to be added. And I'm going to clean my toothbrush out. I'm going to take a lot of the yellow medium here. And I'm going to spray that right into this area here to create that frilliness of the leaves on the edges. I'm going to let that set there a minute. And I'm going to take that same yellow mixed with some of that green that I mixed up over here, and I'm going to start to paint up against the boathouse a little bit more. And out to the edge here. And then we have a dark green, it's almost like a pine tree coming up in here that overlaps the boathouse. And then I'm going to come into the very dark area over here and put this dark in very casually. And I'm pushing and pulling the paint in different directions. And one thing I feel it needs over here is just a small description. And I'm adding the blue and the green together with a little bit of the brown matter. And I'm going to make this a little bit darker. And it's actually a pine tree here, and I'm going to make it a little bit more descriptive at this point.
Mm.
Then I'm going to take the toothbrush with a little bit of the yellow on it. And then I'm going to slowly dry brush down into the reeds along the bank here so that it leaves a little bit of that look to it. And I'm going to pull out the light that was right in here. And I'm making some of this a little bit darker over here because that light band of trees that is right here will make the eye follow a little bit too much because our eyes are attracted to light first. So I'm going to darken that in a little bit and I'll deal with it later. But I want that mask to go kind of away at this point. Then I'll take the brush again, the smaller brush, and I'm going to feed it in next to the water here. So this is the darker part of the rushes or the plant life that's up against the river here. And then I'm going to go and change my color a little bit. So I'm brought the brown matter into with the yellow, green, and the green. And I'm going to put that right up front here. I'm going to tap the brush off so it's dry brushing. It creates a texture. And it's going to go right up onto the boathouse and kind of along the shoreline. And if you notice, I'm being quite casual about this. You have to remember nature is very forgiving, so if not everything comes into view the same way it is in a photograph, I'm really not concerned about it. Then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some very dark darks back into the river using the ultramarine blue and the green and a little bit of that brown matter. And again, I'm going to paint in a downward movement. I'm going to take the toothbrush to soften the edge up here. So this again will give the imprint of the value of the river. And I'm lightening the value as it moves over. And then I have the top part of the roof here. Then back to a little bit more dark. And I got to get it lined up with the reflection of the building here. Resculpt this out a little bit. And what I want to do is make it not a mirror image, but I'm going to go ahead and soften this in here. so that the image is not portrayed as a mirror image. Then I'm adding more green out here and a little bit yellow green underneath there. And then it comes into this bank across the river here. And the very last thing I'm going to do is put some yellow green in here and up in here. So again, I did not touch the boathouse, but I do want to signify this bank that's across the river here, and there's a dark that runs right there. So what I did is I used the darks up in here at this point. Lots of sap green, ultramarine blue, a little bit of the alizarin or the brown matter, changing it every so often. Then I came up against this right here, and I took the toothbrush after I had dry brushed into this area, and I used straight cadmium yellow medium up in here, and then I'll soften as it comes up in here. Then I darken this over here. I don't want this to attract the eye too much. I'll do a little bit more work on it. Then down through the river with the darker blue-green, leaving a little bit of the idea of the reflection of the boathouse, and then back across here and across the grass. So you guys can go ahead and get started on that. If your water gets dirty, remember to change it, because I've changed mine twice already. And I'm always cleaning off my palette in between. So you got to have some clean water to have clean color. I'm going to go down the list to see how you folks are doing. Pat, could you show me what you're doing? If you would, please. All right, good. You're where you want to be. Wonderful. Rick, could you show me what you have so far? Oh, you'll have to start over. No, I'm just kidding. You're good. That's fine. And Marilyn, can you show me what you got? Okay. You need to get your water darker. So work on the water area. Jim, you're coming along good. I could see you got going. Lisa, you're fine. You need to work on the water, of course. Denise, how are you doing? All right. You still need to bring the water across a little bit more and kind of give a little bit more description to that forward bank of grass that's off to the lower left. But you're doing fine.
Great.
Julie. Good. Wonderful. Margaret, how are you doing? All right, good. Get your water a little bit darker in the foreground. Mary. Oh, that's coming along nice. Good. All right. Anne Marie.
I don't know, Dale. It looks kind of dull to me. I've kind of dulled it out. I don't know how, but.
It doesn't look that dull on the picture I'm seeing here.
Okay.
You're within perfect reason. There's nothing to be worried about.
Okay.
That bank of the lower right-hand corner, the water in the bank there, you have it going right to the corner, and I've got it about an inch up coming across. Let me point that out just a minute.
Okay.
I'm on the other side of the fence here. Right here, this comes across on a little bit.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, that'll help. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know my shapes are bad too. I'm looking at these shapes and I'm thinking, boy, I need to practice shapes, you know?
Well, yeah, you're going to feel a little out of control, so don't worry about it. And Diana. Hold your camera a little bit lower. I'm seeing your photo. Okay, All right, you're getting there. Oh, just lost your visual, Julie. Or you're down here. There you are. Okay, gotcha.
Did you get a picture?
Yeah. What you want to remember is not to overwork it. Keep it simple. Don't work with little things yet. Worry about the big masses. Okay, we're going to get started again here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work a little bit around the boathouse area, and I'm going to make sure that it's standing more straight up a little bit, and we're going to define it just a little bit more. So I'm going to take a little bit of the sap green with the ultramarine blue, and I'm using my smallest brush at this point with just a touch of the brown madder, just to darken it up enough. And I'm going to go in here and start adding some descriptive darks up and around this a little bit more. So that the boathouse begins to push out a little bit more. So I'm putting darks up against the lights at this point. And I want to bring this dark down here a little bit more. I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue by itself and create the shadow side of the boathouse. And also the little bit of the overhang here. And I'm also going to make the roof a little bit darker. I'm going to use the brown matter with a little bit of the green. That should gray it down enough. And it's got to have some green in it anyways. And I'm making sure that the value changes going across, that it's not remaining the same value, same color totally, just to give it a little bit more description. I'll worry about the windows in the side of it later on. And I'm also going to indent the boathouse doors a little bit so we can start to see that a little bit. And then we have a little bit more descriptive green up against the building here. Then I'm going to come out front of the building. So I'm working out from the focal point, not being overly concerned about, again, the little things, but I'm going to start making this a little bit more descriptive in the foreground with the reeds that are out here. And I'm going to go back into the area above the boathouse with the foliage to make the darks darker that are poking through. So I'm trying to get the idea of things that are coming through from the background. Not too much, just a little bit. And I want to get this slope of the hill here a little bit more. Use my fingernail to soften it. And then get a little bit dark here because we have this pine tree that's right here up against the boathouse. I got a lot of blue in it with the green. I'm going to make this a little bit more descriptive than what's in the photograph. And I'm going to come again on the top of the boathouse. That needs to be darker. Like so. Now, I'm going to come along this edge of the reed area here with a little bit more blue-green. I don't want, there's a lot of light over in here on the photograph. I don't want that light showing up quite that light, so that's going to remain toned down. So I can take a little bit of the brown matter and I'm going to try to make this a little bit less noticeable over here, but still give the idea of what's going on. And I'm going to put in the feeling of another pine tree here. Even though that it's not really noticeable in the photograph, there is a pine tree here. And I'm doing it very, very casually. Some things you want to keep very casual, some things you want to spell out a little bit more. And I'm going to take the toothbrush with just water on it, soften it a little bit. And I'm going to put a few trees in over here just to act as a foil for the foliage. And again, very casual. Then I'll come down to the foliage alongside the river there. So it's a grayed down green with a little bit of that brown matter in it. Again, I'm not trying to portray exactly what's there, but at the same time, I'm going to take my fingernail and I'm going to scratch out a lighter tree, and I just wet the paper there very quickly. And that will help break up that area just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to go down into the water again. And I'm going to spray that with a little bit of water. Just so it falls down. I'm going to take the sap green and the olive green with a little bit of yellow. And a little bit more blue off in this area here. So I put something down and then put something else down in front of it so that it will kind of disperse within there and give you a little bit variance of color. And then I'm going to go in on the other side of the boathouse reflection here, and I am going to be a little bit more careful with the reflection, but not overly careful. And then I'm going to take my large brush here that I have. I'm going to squeeze all the water out of it, and I just want a little bit of movement of water going across through here by pulling up a little bit of the pigment. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to make this area a little bit lighter by lifting it out. I'm going to run dark up against it later, but I'm going to pull some of the reeds that are in here. Then I can make the back half here darker. Then while that dries, I can go in and up ahead of it and make that darker. So again, it's timing on a lot of this. So that's why I'm working around the subject matter and not staying in one place. Now, down in this area here, I'm going to make that the blue-green that I was talking about. I'm going to make this quite a bit darker. And it's dry brushing, just very casually, not to bring too much attention to it, like so. That's where I'm going to stop this, because I don't want to take this too far, but I am going to denote where that door is at here. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out this side of the boathouse down here very softly and very slowly, just to give that illusion of the side of the boathouse as it disappears into the shrubs there. And the very last thing is I'm going to take a little bit of the ultramarine blue by itself with the toothbrush, and I'm going to spray it into the water here just a little bit to give it a little bit of flavoring, and then hit it with just water so it kind of dissipates. So all of it feels like it's running downhill, and that will give the illusion of the reflection a little bit better going down into the water. So what I did is I went back into this area here around the boathouse to make it a little bit more descriptive, darken this up, put a little bit of a pine tree in here, scratched out with my fingernail some later trees coming off the bank, and then added these trees here. So next time we're going to go up and over here and see what we can do with that. Are there any questions at this point? Nobody's got any questions? Anybody with answers?
Yeah, Dale, would you go over how you did the reflection again?
Okay, the reflection, the first thing I did is I made this darker and darker here, and I pulled out this here. But what I did after I did that, I tried to pull out a little bit of this form in the reflection of the boathouse. Pulled out a little bit here. I don't want to make it a total mirror reflection. It usually becomes very bothersome. I'm going to work on a little bit more. Then what I did is I took ultramarine blue, sprayed it into those areas, and then just water, just so that it drips down. So I don't know whether you can see that.
Yes, I can. Yes, thank you.
Dale, it's Anne Marie. What did you say you did? You dragged through the water to make it look like it's flowing? How did you do that?
I ran, you mean the movement of the water?
Yes.
Okay, not the reflection. I took my 1-inch flat and I put it in the water. Then I pulled out as much of the water as I could with paper towel, and then ran a little bit of angular lines through it. That was it. Okay.
We'll need to do a lot more.
Yeah, that one area of the yellow-green tree that's coming up above the boathouse, I'm going to show you how to lift out a little bit more, because right now it looks like a plume of smoke coming out of the boathouse. Can I see what you got, Julie, please? Okay, good.
I have to darken up down in here.
Yes, you still need to darken up there.
Yeah,
Not a lot, but a little bit more.
yeah, it's a little too wet right now.
Okay. Diana, how are you doing? Okay, you're there. You're getting there. That's good. Anne Marie, how are you doing?
I was just going back to try darken up some of it. And see.
Okay, you're doing fine. The area
I feel like I'm overworking though, everything.
no, but the area up in here we're going to work a little bit more. I need to put this one tree in here and model this a little bit, but that's what we're going to do next. So it's going to get darker.
Thank you.
Mary, are you there? Okay, good. Wonderful. Margaret, how are you doing? All right. You need to bring, we're going to work on this area next in here, and that's what you're going to get darker. So you wait to do that with after I work here. And Denise, how is it coming? Okay, good. Yeah.
I'm working on the water and then down to the left side right now.
That's fine. That's where you need to be. And Lisa, it's coming along fine. Good. Jim, you're doing nice. And Marilyn, how's it coming? All right, it's getting there. Okay. And finally, Pat, how are you doing? Okay. The area up in here, I'm going to redesign a little bit, the shoreline, so it's a little bit more evident. You need to design that a little bit more after I show you. But you're doing fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to get started again. I think we're all about where we need to be. One of the things I want to bring up, I don't know if you saw this on the page about Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting.
It was the last page
It was the last page that we sent out to you
with the video.
with the video. And Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting kind of reinforces everything I've been telling you about values and color and composition and so forth. But you can pick this up at Amazon for about, I think, $12. It's a very good book. I use it as the Bible in the different classes I teach. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we're going to manipulate a few things here first. And I am going to take some water with a toothbrush and paper towel, and I am going to take it and I'm going to put it right up in here with a little bit of just water, and you let it sit there just a little bit, and then I'm going to pull it off, and you can see what happens here. It gives that sparkle of the individual leaves showing up a little bit more. And depending on how much water and how long you leave it there, depends on how much color comes up. And I'm going to do the same thing over here just a little bit. Usually it shows up better in dark areas than in light areas, but it gives a nice texture without adding any more paint to the paper. Got to get rid of that white spot here. Now, there is a reflection of the reeds that are in the water here. And I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and some of the sap green, which are really the two colors I'm relying on, and a touch of the brown matter. And I am going to go along in here and I'm going to separate this just a little bit to show that the reflection of the reeds are in the water here, and I'll show you what we can do with it. So I just drew a very simple line here, and I'm going to soften it here and there, push it up, pull it down. Then I'm going to take the 1-inch flat brush with just water on it, and I'm going to pull it down into the water so it looks like we have the reflection of the reeds up above reflecting down into the water. Something very simple. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to put it right over in here just a little bit and kind of feed it into the reeds on the bank, on the forward bank here. Then along the edge of right in here, I'm going to lift out some light, because that's where the water hits the bank, and it has a tendency of rippling up and reflecting the light from above. And I don't want to overdo it because the light will compete with the lighthouse or the boathouse, and I don't want that to happen. So it's a lot of little things that I'm actually doing here. I'm taking the ultramarine blue, mixing it into the green that I already have here, and I am going to define the boathouse a little bit more, make it a little bit darker here. And then I'm going to let it run down, take a damp brush, just let it fall. That helps strengthen the reflection a little bit. And then I'm going to put the angle of the roof in here, like so, and then bring it across like so. So we have a little bit of that reflection showing in the water. Now we're going to go up into the area that's up in here. But first I've got to do one more thing. I'm taking the brown matter, and I feel that the roof is too light. So I'm going to take and darken it up just a little bit more. Because it's coming out a little bit too much. And then I'm going to take the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue underneath the eaves here to find this. I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to put the windows in on the side, or the window. And the other window back here. And I'm doing it very casually. I don't want to bring any importance to it at this time. Now, into the background we go. And I am going to take this yellow green. I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow medium and the olive green. And I'm going to put a little bit right in here and here, and I'm going to run that across through here to bring a little bit more light into there. I'm going to take the yellow green, I got a little bit more yellow to it, and I'm going to hit the reeds right in here that they come out just a little bit more. Now we'll go up into the top half. And there are a lot of darks up there, and I'm going to use the ultramarine blue again with a little bit of the sap green and a touch of the alizarin, or the brown matter. Now the reason why I use the brown matter, it's not a fugitive color. It's a color that will be more permanent, where alizarin crimson's not that permanent unless you get where it says permanent alizarin crimson. But the reason why I like the brown madder, it's a little bit more organic. And I'm going to signify very casually some trees in the background here. Not too much. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the ultramarine blue to it, down towards the bottom. And I'm not covering everything again, as I had said before. I'm just trying to give an idea of something back there, but if you describe it too much, it will come out of the woods and be a little bit too much for the boathouse. So again, ultramarine blue, different combinations, a little bit of alizarin crimson, and I'm going to begin giving this a little bit more description up here with the pine tree that is actually enveloped in the woods here. And another one over here, even though there's not one here, I'm going to go ahead and put one in. And I'm pushing and pulling the brush in different directions here. Again, if I do too much up here, it's going to be overpowering to certain. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a few trees in here. And it's going to be very quickly, just to give an idea of something up here. It's not going to be showing the full tree. And I'm making sure that you don't see the same size tree, the same distance with the trees between them. So I'm looking at the negative area between. This will help just simply break up the background a little bit. And I'm going to take just a little bit of the blue itself, and I'm going to do that in here like this. And then I'm going to take the yellow, and I am going to take the yellow medium, mix it in with the green. So we have kind of a yellow-green grade down. So it looks just about like this. There. And I'm going to put that down towards the bottom here, and that will help soften the edge of the background a little bit, as there's lower shrubs in there. Going to add a little bit more water to it, a little bit more green, and I'm going to add a little bit in here. Now I'm going to go back to pulling out one larger tree in here. That's a little bit more distinctive. And one here. I'm going to add a little bit of blue, a little bit more blue to the shadow side of the boathouse. And a touch more blue in the reflection up here. And then I'm going to pull out that birdhouse that's right here. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I feel that we do need it. And I'm going to take the smaller brush and I'm going to kind of sculpt it out of here. So I'm going to take and pull it out with paper towel. So what I'm doing is I'm lightly pulling the birdhouse out. I'm not going to put a lot of work on it, but I do want it to be looking like it belongs there. And I have to narrow down the side here just a little bit more. And some final touches up here in the tree that I'm seeing here. Just some branches to help support all this. And I want a little bit brighter yellow right here. And then pull out a few more distinctive reed tips here. And I want it very soft, because if I make them too sharp, your eye is attracted to sharper edges, and I don't necessarily want it to be too sharp. And then we have a little bit of the roof showing in the water, a little bit of that red with the alizarin and the green. So a lot of these things are final touches to what's going on here. I'm going to pull out a few little lights up in here that will help distinguish some of the edges of those pines that are in the background. And it will help break that area up just a little bit. Then I'm going to take the ultramarine blue and I'm going to add it a little bit at the bottom here and here, just for some color ideas, to pull some of that blue down from the sky. And then we have, oh, where do I want to put one? I'm going to put a tree right here, because I feel a lighter tree coming in here will help. And a lot of these last minute things are adjustments that I was looking at, what needs to be adjusted here and there. So I'm taking up some of the dark green with my brush that's already on the palette and adding it a little bit out in here. And then taking the ultramarine blue, a little bit of the brown matter with a touch of the green in it. So it makes a nice brownish green. And I'm going to add a few trees in here that protrude out of the woods, even though they're not in the picture. I just feel that it brings the forest forward just a little bit more. Couple accent darks in here. Make this edge a little bit darker here so it turns the corner a little bit nicer. Indent the door a little bit. Probably one of the last things I want to do with this is define a couple of different areas in here notice that the boathouse reflection is a little off, but not too bad. And I want to soften that just a little bit. It's a matter of what I'm doing here is kind of dabbing along to pull up a little bit of the pigment, but not too much. And then I want to pull up the reflection of the reeds on the other side here. And here. And we'll take the tape off, and I'll watch you folks finish, but taking the tape off is going to reveal the color just a little bit better, because the white of the paper shows what the relationship is. So that's what we ended up with.
Hi, Dale. It's Anne Marie. No, that's beautiful. I mean, the devil's really in the details. I'm not good at lifting out. I've never done that before. Is it with a dry brush you do it?
Actually, I dip the brush in the water, then I pull off a lot of the water like this. And then what I'm doing is I'm simply lifting very carefully, like so.
Okay. Yeah, mine were coming out too fat. It looks crazy, so I got to redo it.
Yeah. Sometimes what you can do, if your brush is not doing what you want it to do, is you could take a smaller brush, such as this one here, and you can take, I'm going to do this right up here very close. You can line it like this, let it sit there a few minutes or a few seconds, and then you can start pulling it up in repeated action, and you'll get a line here just with a simple brush. If your 1-inch flat brush is not doing, or any other brush, you can simply hit it with water, pull it up with a paper towel, and repeat it till it gets to its lightness.
Thank you.
Dale, what size is the paper you're painting on? I don't think I have that right.
He stepped out for a minute, but he took a full sheet of paper and quartered it. It's easier for him to get a demo done in that size, and also it's easier for you, so you don't have to work with a big sheet. Do you want me to take a ruler to it?
Yeah, that would be.
Okay, but it's a quarter of a full sheet of watercolor.
It turns out to be like 12 by 15 or 12
Yeah.
by 15 and a half or something like that.
That's right.
Because the sheets, I think, are 24 by 33.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes it more manageable when you're trying to learn.
I think I'm going to get just plain French ultramarine. I have French ultramarine, and it is so dark.
Well, yeah, French ultramarine is a little bit darker than ultramarine plain, but it should really change the outcome.
It's a dark, that green is dark.
It's just a little bit darker.
Well,
Diana.
I have so much dark in it. It's just.
Well, I've got a lot of dark going on in here too. That's coming along nice, Lisa.
Thank you.
Jim, that's coming along good. Rick, that's fine. Don't forget to put some of the people in the background on the grass playing volleyball.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is mine, Julie.
Yes. Oh, that's nice. Wonderful.
I'm just gonna let it dry and go from there.
That's, yeah, a lot of the end part of the painting is watching it dry and then deciding what you're going to do, going back into it. But I think you got a great handle on it.
Okay, thank you.
But hey, good job, Jim.
Dale, I got one quick question. When
Good thing.
I lift, I don't know, you make it look easy, and I've got actually like an oil brush that I cut down, so it's kind of stiff.
Okay.
But
I use an oil brush like this to lift too, but I didn't use it this time.
yeah, that's exactly what I've got.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't get down to like the white paper, I mean,
You never will. You never will. The only thing that is white of the paper is the front of the boathouse.
right. Okay, so there's always going to be like some pigment there,
Yes,
whether
yes, there will be. Yeah.
all right.
But I really like the improvement that you've gone through since I've seen you at Elmhurst and at Main Street. You're doing fabulous.
Well, I don't know, I'm trying.
Well,
Not
you're,
easy.
you're doing all right.
All right, well, you have a good week.
You
Okay,
too.
you too.
Thanks.
Bye bye.